everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Nurse Akosia. Today I want us to talk about how I plan and start my shift. So let's get started. All right, so today I want us to talk about how I start my shift, how I plan it with the nursing here in the United States. Trust me, if you don't plan, that 12 hours won't be enough for you. But if you plan, and with your experience from Ghana, because in Ghana the patient ratio is like all over the place, it's gonna be way easier for you. But trust me, you gotta plan your shift. So what I do when I come to work, when I get to work, what I do is I go and I get my assignments. When you go to the nurses station, they have a printout of a summary of all the patients that you have. And in my hospital, the maximum is 6. It got to a time we're getting so many 4s and 5, and then we started getting 6, and then we were like, oh my gosh. Yeah, the maximum is 6. So you go and then you check your patient list, the assignments that have been given to you. What I usually do is try to get to work earlier, like 15 minutes earlier, or 15 minutes to 30 minutes earlier. And then I go for the assignments, sit down, go through them just to get a little bit of information about my patients. And then when I'm done, I go look for the nurse that I'm supposed to take the report from. Sometimes it's one nurse, sometimes it's 2 nurses, sometimes it's 3 nurses, because you have, let's say you have your 6 patients, one nurse may have 2 of them, another may have 4 of them, another may have just 1 of them. So that's how the report works here. And yeah, the longer your report takes, the time is eating into your time. But ask all the necessary information that you need to ask, especially with a plan for the patient. What are we going to do for this patient? If they don't know during your shift, just try to figure out what the plan is for the patient. But most of the time, when I take the report, I go over and review things for myself. And that's why you're supposed to assess your patient as well. And there are certain things that may change during your shift. So yeah, during the report, you're just getting a summary of what is about the patient, and that's it. You don't have to rely on the report for everything. They're not going to be able to provide you with every single information during their shift or on the patient. You have to go and read and figure out certain things on your own. Yeah. So when I go and take my report, I take it and round on the patient at the same time. The outgoing nurse will say bye to the patient, and I say hello, introduce myself, and there is a board in the patient's room that you're going to update. It has the rounds on there and the time that you round on the patient. You're going to circle and sign, write your name, and then the number for the spectra, and then whatever necessary information that you have to put on there, you're going to put on there. So after my rounds and report, I do the rounds and the report. If you are trying to fit everything into your time, you have to do certain things together. And even the rounds, when you're giving report, the best way to give report is to go into the patient's room. If you think certain things cannot be discussed in front of the patient, hold on to that. But you have to do the report inside of the patient's room. And then that's where you do your introduction and everything, because sometimes it may waste your time. If you're going to do your report, you come back and then you come and do your introduction, do everything together. Yeah. And then when I'm done with my report, I come, sit down, and then I plan. So I select my patients. Every time you come, unless you do have the same group of patients, you're going to select your patients under your name. We use Cerner at where I work. So I'm going to put all the patients under my name, so it becomes easier for me to access. And then I go through the patient's information, write down the important things, like if they do have a procedure, what I'm supposed to do for them. Some of them may be on blood sugar checks. Some of them have neuro checks. If a patient has stroke, you're gonna do neuro checks every 4 hourly. And also, if they do have a central line or a PIC line or a midline, you're gonna put it there, because you have to also assess it every 4 hours. So yeah, I'm gonna put all my to-dos. So I put the room number. What I do is the sheets that I'm given, the summary, the patient summary that is given to me, The last page and the last but one pages are what I use. So the last but one pages I divided into columns and rows, and then I write room, meds, and then to do. I write the room number, and then I put in the medication and the time that I do those medications, and then the to do, what I'm supposed to do for the patients. And then I list them all according to room. Then on the last page, I put down how I'm gonna go about doing my things. So what I usually do is you have to do your 8 o'clock assessments. What I do is I do my assessments together with my medications, because you have to make sure you're managing your time. You go to the patient's room and you do everything. Unless you come out, the patient needs something else, you just go in there. But make sure you plan your shift. So I do my meds and my assessments at the same time. So depending on the medication and the time that it starts, if I do have 7 o'clock medications, I do it even before I I start the whole planning medication thing. I just, because most of the time a lot of patients don't have 7 o'clock medications. Most of the times it starts from 8, and even 8 o'clock medication is just a few of them that do have it. So if my patients have 8 o'clock medication, there are, per our hospital policy, medication is an hour before and an hour after. So if the patient has an 8 o'clock medication, you can either give it um, from 7 to 8 and from 8 to 9. Cannot be after 9 o'clock. So depending on the number, let's say I have 6 patients and I do have 3 of them on 8 o'clock medications. That will determine when I'm gonna start my medication. So I'm gonna do my assessment and my medications at the same time, which means that the assessment, what I do know is you're supposed to do your assessment on your patient within 2 minutes. Yeah, sometimes it may take a while because some patients you have to be very patient on them to get exactly what you're looking for. So I start depending on the number of patients. So if, let's say, I have 2 patients with 8 o'clock medication, I start at 8:30. Yeah, at 8:30. And what I do know is because of the hour before and an hour after, if I have 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock medication, there's something called cluster your medications. Yeah, I cannot give the 10 o'clock medication at 8 o'clock, but I can give it from 9 to 10. So I'm gonna start my 8 o'clock, and when I list out the medications that I do have, I listed, depending on the rooms, I listed from the rooms that have the 8 o'clock medication. And then the clustering, I do 8, 9, 10 cluster, 11, 12, 1 cluster. If I don't have 11, I make it 12, 1, 2 cluster. All you have to do is make sure that it is within the hours that the hospital policy gives you. So yeah, and then I do 4, 5, 6 cluster. So if it's 4 o'clock, I start with the 4 o'clock. By the time I'm done with the 4 o'clocks, we'll be in 5 o'clock. And then in 5 o'clock, if it's 6:30, I have to make sure that it's after 5:30 to give that medication. So yeah, it's all about planning, and sometimes you may have to wait a little while. While you're waiting a little while, definitely you will get something to do. You get to the patient's room, oh, can I get more water? Can I get this? Can I get that? Sometimes you cannot ask the PCA to do everything. Sometimes they may be busy doing other things as well. So you just go get your things for your patient. And by the time you get back, the time will be working along with everything that you do. And then what I do is I have to make sure I chart my 8 o'clock assessments before 12 a.m. So after I'm done with my medications, except antibiotics, for antibiotics, what happens is it's very, very strict. The system will not allow you to give any antibiotic until that time is due. So sometimes I look for patients that have antibiotics, and then if that time falls within my cluster time, I plan around that antibiotic time so I don't have to go and come back. That's what I do. And then I do my assessments as well. So You may start at 8:30 and you might finish at like 10:30. Yeah, it's a long time because you have to communicate with your patient also to get information from them. That's the only times. That's the times when you communicate with your patients. That's when you find out what exactly is going on with them. And some of them are lonely when they come that they need people to talk to. Sometimes they may talk a whole lot, and you have to find a very polite way to get out of that conversation. Yeah. But yeah, so it may take you up to 2 hours or more if you're slow. But as time goes on, you get used to it, you start picking up. And then between 10:30 to the next medication, let's say if it's 11 or if it's 12, if it's 11, 12, 1, I'm definitely going to start from 11:30 or 11:45. So within those times, I chart. Yeah, I do my chart. And the chart, when you start, it's a little bit slow, but then as time goes on, it becomes a little faster for you. And that actually was from my preceptor. She knows herself. She told me, Celeste, she was like, you know what? Just make sure that you are done with your 8 o'clock chart by 12 o'clock a.m. And it works out perfect for me. So typically by 1 or 2, I should be done with all my charting. If you have 6 patients, it's a lot to chart on. Trust me. The 6 patient, you think it's yeah, compared to what we do in Ghana, but here the charting takes. If you take the charting out of the whole shift, the patient care is not bad at all. And nobody has a problem with patient care. The charting is what takes your time, so that is what you have to make sure you do to stay within your time and within your plan. Yeah. So in between those times, I'll be charting, and you know the charting, when you just sit down to chart, everybody thinks you're doing nothing. Yep. So when you're charting, it's not that you're sitting there and then things go on and you ignore. No, you be sitting there charting, call button, respond, go do your things, come back, sit down, chart. That's how it is. Get up, go, come back, sit, chart until you finish your charting. When you finish your charting, most of the time it's more like a whole load has been taken off you. A load has been taken off you with the charting. But then when you have those 4 hourly things to do, those assessments, then you go do your assessments and then you come and chart again. But those are not too much like the actual assessment charting. Yeah. And then what I do is I usually take my lunch between 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. So between those times, if everything allows, I take my lunch. And I will not, I'm not gonna, scare people. There are a whole lot of people saying you cannot take your lunch and it's so stressful, and you can take your breaks. And well, maybe it happens in some hospitals, but where I work, they tell us that the lunch is very, very important. So um, they try as much as possible for you to take your lunch. But you know, you're a nurse, and sometimes you may be taking your lunch and it gets interrupted. That is taken care of by the hospital. But then, for me, but the most part, I'm able to take my lunch. So yeah, it's not that bad. Depending on where you work, if they actually think about the staff, if they think about their employees, then you should be able to take your lunch. After I do my meds, the meds, cluster them and give them, and then chart in between, attend to patients in between. And then I make sure that I complete my report with the MDDRs. I complete it by 3 to 4 a.m. And then we have something, the boards, I make sure I complete it by 3 to 4 a.m. or maximum, like latest by 5 a.m. And then when I'm done, I'll still be doing my meds, checking on patients in between. I cluster my meds. So definitely if I have a 6 o'clock medication, I should be starting around 5. And by the time that it's report time, which is more like 6:45-ish, going to 7, I should be ready to give out my report. And yeah, that's it. And hardly do I spend more time like being in the hospital, but at around 8. No, when I'm done with my report, I grab my bag and then I'm out. So, yeah, that is how I plan my shift. If you need any guidance in planning your shift, if you're new here in the United States and it's quite overwhelming, you can email me or you can comment in the comment section below, ask your questions, and I'll be more than willing to help you because it took me a little while, but for me, planning is a thing for me everywhere because I've been in the hospital in Ghana. I went to the corporate and everything that I do, I just plan. If I don't plan, everything is going to be a mess. So that's how I plan my shift. And then it turns out great. And I'm able to leave at the exact time, unless for some reason I'm leaving and then you get a rapid response or you get a cold blue or something. But for that, that is a once in a while thing and not a regular thing. So yeah, that is it. If you have any questions or any comments, just comment down below or you can email me. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed, kindly hit the subscribe button and have a great day.